Well, we're going to keep moving forward here. We want to add to the mix here, very honored to add to the mix, Tef Poe, musician, organizer, and co-founder of Black Men Build. Tef, thank you so much for joining us.
How's it going, everybody?
It's going fantastic, man, and I really appreciate you joining us. Here's my first question for you, Tef. Seeing what happened with this verdict this week, and thinking back to myself of what we saw when that third precinct in Minneapolis was burned down, and I was there the next day, and other things happening in the uprising. I mean, is this verdict really a message that whatever else you can say, that no matter what they say, uprisings can do something, can have an effect, can make change to some degree?
I mean, to me, the verdict is a direct result of the uprising. I don't see how any politicals are associating it with anything else. Of times in the Black liberation movement today, the nonprofit sector of the movement takes credit for victories that the streets actually propagated and organized.
Monica, let me ask you this too, because you were there quite a bit around the Rayshard Brooks situation in Atlanta, obviously, tragic murder there and the uprising that took place there. I mean, talk about the impact perhaps of this verdict. I mean, because people were so demonized in Atlanta. There was so much demonization of the protest movement as not constructive. You had Killer Mike come out and speak against y'all and different pieces like that. Not to put him on blast, but just, historically going through it, what happened. I mean, talk about how you feel after this verdict about all of the naysaying about, what people should be doing in terms of making change.
Yeah. On that note, I feel that the results have to speak for themselves. Of course, this is but a small step. Like we said, justice would be a longer life for George Floyd. Justice would be Rayshard Brooks, not being killed for doing the ostensibly right thing and sleeping in his car instead of driving home when he was drunk. We saw the protest movement in Atlanta be demonized, be blamed for the death of a young girl, which they have not really done much in the investigation of the death of that young girl at the the formerly known Wendy's, Rayshard Brooks Peace Center that is still blocked off by concrete. They blamed the Black Lives Matter protests, and then it gave them a pass to just completely ignore us and to completely say that we're a fringe group that is violent. Who knows? There were many people that were around. I find it very convenient that those powers that be get to blame the protest movement for that. The protest movement is the reason why they have to still sort of talk about this issue. We have city council members, part of task forces that claim to be on the side of the families of police victims, Rayshard Brooks's wife. But these people are unresponsive or unhelpful when it comes to struggles that impact the people that Rayshard Brooks, his milieu. We in the housing struggle, some of these city council members they claim to be for the people. They're always at the protest. They always want to speak. Depending on the protest, not really. Right. The more powerful, really full of emotion, a real outcry. They're not really at those. They get to plan their own. They get to, prepare a little speech, wear Chanel earrings while homeless people are 100 feet away from them, and posture as if there is a real desire for change to make Atlanta work for us. And I think that these misleaders, as many have called them, they want to control the protests more than anything. They know that people won't stop uprising, so they want to kind of control it, hold it in, put it in a corral where they can kind of set the terms of our movement. So it's a really important task to be clear about the fact that the genuine outcry of the people is what can lead to change when we get organized and when we're able to hone in on that.
Tef, I wonder where this leaves us, after a verdict like this. I mean, I think especially, and I think you're 100% right, it's sort of being a direct result of the uprising. And I think, we often see significant upsurges of activity, I don't want to say it's totally spontaneous, but just the overflowing anger of the masses. How do you capture that anger? How do you direct that frustration and that outrage, moving forward in terms of, not just having the initial outpouring, but also being able to direct power, if you know what I'm saying?
I think he's muted.
Oh, you might be muted.
Sorry. I was saying that we just have to remember that the goal is simply not to be mad, but to be mad and organized, and to have the aspiration to become a well-oiled mechanism of resistance. If you know anything about me, I'm all about resistance from Ferguson till now to Palestine. Wherever my feet touch, I'm trying to find the poor. I'm trying to find the marginalized. I'm trying to find the oppressed, because that's who I know is going to be my protectors if I get into a situation with law enforcement in whatever city, whatever country, whatever town. It don't matter. I'm trying to get up with the people who are up under the foot of the boot. And we have to remember now that we, in America, we are in the belly of the beast. The rest of the world is watching us and depending on the people who are on the front lines in this country to continue to push, because without us, they don't have hope globally. Because when people globally see that folks in the U.S. are no longer taking it, we're resisting their narratives, and we're also seeing deeper. I was watching the conversation earlier, and my sister over here said something really real about class. And that made me sit there and I said, what is the actual political line of the liberals? What is, I know the conservatives' political line. I know Black Lives Matter's political line, but the liberal progressive movement, please, for the love of God, tell me, what is your actual political line? What are your non-negotiables? Where do you push? Where do you say this is not, after this happens, we must topple the regime? Where does that exist in the liberal progressive movement? I can tell you where it exists in the conservative movement, but I don't know in the liberal movement.
That's a well said point. You were saying earlier, I remember seeing you, Tef, in Ferguson many years ago, and I saw that divide you were talking about. That divide, and I think it's a divide. Actually, you mentioned Palestine. It's a divide that Palestinians have to deal with too. Is that kind of like NGOization of certain movements, and that tends to take the radical character out or tries to strip it away. And, I see that happen abroad as well as in the US, but, hopefully what I also see is that people out in the streets who are actually on the front lines in these communities dealing with this issue, are being loud as they should be. And, they're the ones who are being policed. They're the ones who are the targets. They're the ones who cannot breathe, if you will. And so I hope their voice continues to come through the loudest and gets the bigger platform, because that's who we need to be hearing from. And that message definitely gets dampened, intentionally so, by certain liberal institutions. And again, I've seen the same thing play out abroad too.
Well, I think that's a good point. I mean, I'm curious your thoughts, Tef. How do we address this? I mean, obviously, it's become a little bit of a controversy here in the U.S. with some of the things that have happened recently about, which activists are doing what and whether or not it's scrupulous. Yeah. But it's obviously a phenomenon that is, in addition to, I guess, the forces everyone may identify as with the enemy. I mean, there is this huge piece of the struggle, which, as I think Monica labeled it, the misleaders.
Yeah, I think we have to bring back political education. And it's when we can't be ashamed to call folks out that aren't politically educated. I don't want to listen to, and Lord forgive me, I'm going to get stoned for saying this, but I don't want to listen to the soundtrack to a movie about Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. and cats is on here talking about capitalism while they trying to pose as revolutionaries. And it's the same cats that's oppressing people, making deals with these companies that own private prisons, the same cats putting out your records are putting you in prison. You get a record deal, you're in the pipeline to go to prison quicker than you were when you were in the streets. These are the same people setting up soundtracks for revolutionary figures that put their lives on the line for us. And we wonder, and we're being manipulated on so many levels, man. And that's why I just deeply believe we got to bring back the political education. And it's not corny. That's the problem. The problem is, for so long, the movement has let straight corny mofos take the main stage. And if you know, and now it's just time to be real. There's too many corny people balling in the zeitgeist. And the general public will not attach itself to corny people, no matter what you're talking about. So it's time for us that know that we are on the right side of history to step up and be unafraid to step up, point blank, period.
Monica, get in here.
I have plenty of thoughts. I mean, I did think about Judas and the Black Messiah. I like a couple of the actors in that film, but really the point of it, the point of a lot of what Tef is getting at here is that there's more spotlight on who has to struggle with the two forces within them, whether I collaborate with the state or whether I'm for the people. And those, like in earlier segments of the show, those who actually give their lives to the struggle are more often than not criminalized, disappeared, or run away before that happens to them. If we're in it for the long haul, we have to know that repression will come, and we should be clear about that. We should say, if someone is able to get on and get a certain platform and get just an easy way to, if Cadillac will give you any money, it's not, maybe you're not for the people. Maybe, this kind of self-criticism needs to come out a bit more. If you can get any funding from companies that claim to be for luxury. We see the way that some of these rappers, these artists, treat those around them, treat their families, their wives, so we can't be fooled into thinking that dinner with them is better than the $50,000 of our liberation. Like if we dinner with Jay-Z is not going to get us anywhere. Political education is the point. The practice in your community, and actually not being just someone who writes online or is a pundit or kind of styles themselves as
right.
someone who really who knows what we have to do. The only way we can make changes by doing. So I think that if we should criticize ourselves, and we should criticize those who get to kind of stand on the sidelines and tell us what to do. I live like half a mile from the Wendy's where Rayshard Brooks was killed, and I went to my house to get like a granola bar, and by the time in the time that I left before I came back, Killer Mike and T.I. had come to say some things and they had left, and we were there for many hours that day. So what really is their place in the discourse? So if those who get to be promoted by the news, the symbols, the black faces in high places, the higher
Monica,
you get, you
I
have
do
to
want to
start
jump in real
asking,
quick.
who are you really serving? So that's I see a lot of that in Atlanta. I see a lot of that wherever we have long histories of movements. The opportunists are there. So we have to be smart about that. We have to tell those we're organizing with that we it's the primary importance of who we are led by. What is our dominant line?
Juan.
Yeah, I do want to jump in. There's so many things that like you and Tef just hit on that really like I had to come off of like doing the background stuff real quick.
That's all right.
Because honestly, like I remember when we were in the car, Eugene, and we were watching the reports that they were like protests in Atlanta, and it was Killer Mike, right? Killer Mike, loot, steal, kill. right? Talking about how we shouldn't be in our communities. These are historically like black communities. These are businesses owned by black people. Like, it's very easy when something is not happening for you to talk all the smoke that you want to smoke. But while there, I censored myself, Eugene. You should be proud of me.
I appreciate that. It's a family show.
But it's really in the moments of action
wish you
and like
wouldn't.
what people are doing and what people are saying that should be held up, right? Because at the end of the day, who does that serve, right? Now Killer Mike is doing the black-owned bank, right? That's what he's doing right now. In the moments where there needs to be like funding for movements and not funding for like, you know, these like nonprofits that have been stealing money. I'm not gonna get to that because we're about
It's
to
a
be on the
family
wrong.
show.
We're about to get stoned too. Tef, we're gonna be together for it, right? We're gonna be. Tef, agree with me. But yeah, but also like people like D-Ray, right? People like D-Ray that is out here talking about, oh
said
look,
it.
Doritos is so progressive. Like, is that really what the movement needs? Is that really where we're at as people, right? People that end up having their own TV shows, and like, what are they doing on these TV shows? Like, when you get put in the limelight, when you get put on a platform, right? Like, when you don't have to constantly fight to stay on that platform, it's because you're serving something, right? I like Judas and the Black Messiah. That soundtrack made no sense. Why do you have Jay-Z on a... I might be peeking right now. I'm sorry, I'm gonna move my mic out because I'm getting angry. Why do you have
levels.
Jay-Z on a soundtrack about the Black Panthers that stood against capitalism? The answer
you also
isn't
had-
black capitalism. It's solidarity. It's
So
socialism,
disrespectful, so
right?
disrespectful.
Rania.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's very reminiscent of like Beyonce doing that that music video where she used Black Panther like basically uniform.
We're gonna make it too many people angry.
And
We're gonna make too
literally
many
at the
people
end of
angry.
that.
You saying
I'm
the
just saying,
beehive
literally.
now.
But the point
This
is
is
literally at the end of that.
dangerous.
At the end of that music video, what did she say? Something about like we need a black Bill Gates, and it's like, no, that's not what she like. I mean, don't use the Black Panther. If you want to say that, fine. That's your message, fine. But this is the symbolism of a party that literally stood against that. It was, where you're talking about fighting capitalism, not with black capitalism, but with socialism, and you're going to take that and use it. But that's the reality that we live in. We live in a capitalist country. And there's going to be lots of people as this, using these symbols to try to, make money and co-opt. And that's why I think Tef made a really good point about the importance of political education. Because I don't think it's necessarily like fair to say all these people are just bad. I mean, if they're billionaires, I don't care. They're bad. All billionaires suck. But I'm just saying, like, generally, it's really easy to care about an issue and maybe not be super politically educated in it. And because you're not, it's super easy for your eyes to get really wide and big when you can start to benefit from caring about that issue. And that's the whole point of that sort of foundation NGO, limelight pipeline, is to move people away. So I think that, that's why the political education is so important, because people, if they knew better, then they would be able to resist those luxuries that, that entice really anybody who's human. Anybody's enticed by those things.
Right.
And so it is an issue. And so it's less, I think, about the individual and more about the system that really is built to pull people away from radicalism by enticing them with those fun things,
I mean, I do want to say one more thing. I'm sorry. I'm
Go
hyped.
ahead. I mean, you control all our sounds, so I mean,
Yeah, I'll mute everybody. Not do I
Go
do want
in,
to say
Juan.
one more thing. I'm going
Go
to say
in.
one more thing. But I remember during the campaign trail, when the elections were still having on, Cory Booker went up and was like bringing up a point against Bernie, and his point was, I was at a black church yesterday, and nobody said they wanted socialism. Everybody said they wanted to have small businesses, right? And the thing is that is the reality for working class people, right? Because that is the political education that we receive from the TV, from school, from movies, from music. You are just currently embarrassed millionaire, right? This is gonna be your come up story. Started from the bottom, now we here, right? But the reality that we're not sold or we're not told is that the majority of people are poor, live and die poor. And the reason why that is because then the system doesn't work that way, right? It's not functional. If I tell you, you will work this dead-end job for the rest of your life, you're not gonna want to be part of this system. You're gonna revolt. So there has to be a narrative that entices people. That if you keep working here, if you go spend some money on the lotto ticket, if you trade some stocks, you too can be rich. So don't be mad at Jeff Bezos. Don't be mad at Bill Gates. Be mad at yourself for not working hard enough, when that is not the reality. Because poor and working class people are the hardest working people in the world.
Yeah.
They make the world go round, literally.
And also,
Tef,
you guys are bringing up some really good points, but I also want to say too, folks act like black capitalism is this new black radical capitalism thing is brand new. I mean, that's just, once again, is why we need political education. People act like the 1970s never happened. I mean, apparently, like Detroit built the middle class. The reason that we have a middle class, Detroit, Michigan, black folks, working class black folks defined it, created it, made it. Without, you see, where do we have a middle class now? Nah. You know what I mean? Like, so you see the proof in the metrics. It's in the history. It's in the receipts of what actually happened. It's in the liner notes of the story. So, I mean, even if you want to see and also one of the problems is, without that education, we start our own history in an inaccurate place in the story. So we've already had war regimes of black folks that technically ran planet Earth and were greedy. People never heard of Mansa Musa, apparently. See how it worked out? You feel me? Like, I mean, this stuff isn't brand new. Humanity lives in a cycle of repeating the same mistakes. So I think it's also important, what we're all unearthing in this conversation is another thing. The necessity to identify that it's not the people. And a lot of times when you get caught up in calling out folks, what happens is the public needs that moment to understand on these platforms, when they're watching TV, when they're watching whatever, when they're seeing us speak, they need to understand that this is straight up systematic. It's systemic. We can erase me, we can erase DeRay, we can erase Patrice Cullors, we can erase Phil Agnew, we can get rid of everybody. We can Thanos all us up out of here, and the system is it's going to still be a systematic vice that produces people that fill certain societal voids in the zeitgeist, and we all play ping pong and we play our part. I might be the dude that's going to go outside and say, burn it down. You might be the abolitionist. You might be the reformist. You might be the dude that thinks we can get free by being landlords. I wouldn't agree, but hey, that's what you want. But you know what I'm saying? So like it happens. We're not unearthing anything new with a lot of these techniques, strategies, identities, and placements on the chessboard. And I think that now in this era, if you don't learn anything from the George Floyd incident, what you should learn from George Floyd's murder is that innovation actually can move the needle. And sometimes it's difficult because, I mean, I'll be real. I turned on the TV and I saw the press conference after the trial, and I saw each and every person that we ran the heck up out of Ferguson up there. I saw Jesse Jackson, I saw Sharpton, I saw Crump. I was like, yo, my comrades died in the name of running these people out of the city. And these are the people that are on the stage right now telling the story. It's amazing.
You most certainly can.
I was thinking while we were talking about, or while you guys were talking about political prisoners, we have not discussed how, there are several, victims of these struggles, the people that, were instrumental to us knowing about Eric Garner, knowing about, or keeping the movement going in Ferguson, spent years in jail. And so we have, Ramsey Orta, while he was in jail, they're, giving him the wrong food. We have I think his last name is Williams, who was who is still in jail for his 8-year sentence of Ferguson. The people are left to rot, by this capitalist state after really putting in work and really making the difference. And the need to believe that this system will be reformed its way out. The laws can fix it. I mean, when Ramsey order failed, Eric Garner dying, chokeholds were already illegal in New York, and it didn't stop. It didn't stop this person from squeezing the life out of another human being. So we do have to be realistic about what actually lies ahead of us when you actually pose a threat to the system. And those who on the point of Al Sharpton. I think what he posted an Instagram video of getting into a private jet to go watch to go hear the Derek Chauvin trial. It's just like, it's blatantly disrespectful, and it's our people that have to be just run out of these spaces. I was walking, having a good time in New York, walking and saw like an office, one of Al Sharpton's offices in Harlem. I'm like, he's been nothing but a symbol, like kind of a vestige of a different time, a civil rights leader or whatever. And what roots does he have in the community? What does he do for the community? Yeah. What roots does Killer Mike, T.I., what do they do for the community? I mean, T.I. has probably abused several women. There's hundreds or dozens of allegations coming out. And these are the people that get to represent us. So it is of primary importance that we, actively run these people out of our spaces, whether it be on the scale of these celebrities or whether it be someone who, gets to fill that role, is comfortable, taking the money of NGOs and nonprofits to kind of, listen to people but not do anything with the information.
Yeah, I believe. Someone have to double check me here. I believe that private jet that he was on was owned by Ray McGuire, who's a candidate for the mayor of New York City. He's a black man, but he's like a Wall Street banker. And I just saw some article the other day that was like, Ray McGuire wants you to know he's more than just Wall Street's candidate. As more than, if you are Wall Street's candidate, I don't need to know anything else. Well, and to give you a sense on how deep it was, to show his like level of credibility, he was meeting with people in the community. And one guy was like, yeah, he was different than I thought. I think he's the real deal. I mean, we met on a basketball court.
Wow.
I think I'm trying to be the
so yes, black people, we play basketball and we rap. Like, did he also take you to the studio? It reminded me of Pete Buttigieg at Sylvia's with Al Sharpton. Like, it's so ridiculous and so obvious how transparent these attempts are, and just like if this is what you think the ability, it reminds me of what you said earlier, Tef, like if you are corny, you can't get it. And like, really? I'm gonna meet you on a basketball court to show that I'm real? Like, I don't play basketball. I'm sorry. I'm gonna say that. It was my worst sport. And so that would not really move me at all. Like, this white man can't jump or something like that. Go ahead, Rania.
No, I would say that's messed up. I played basketball growing up.
Wow.
Were you good?
So that's messed up. That's generally, I was good. I was short. I'm very short.
Well, I'm gonna have to.
Surprisingly
very
short.
I'm gonna have to see you shoot the rock.
Yeah, very Juan knows.
Steph Curry is short.
Loud,
but in all seriousness, though,
why
I
you
think
gotta
the
bring
point
why you gotta
so
bring
true.
basketball? You gotta drag basketball. Why you gotta
I'm
drag
not dragging basketball. I love basketball.
I'm just saying.
It actually reminds me of Obama's memoir, now that we're saying that. And I hate to even say this, but I had to put the book down when he was talking about how he connected with his blackness through basketball. I was like, no.
That was the movie on Netflix.
No.
Did he really?
The
Did he
whole-
really?
Oh, man.
Yeah, I understand it was special circumstances, but
It hurts.
Lord have mercy. But Monica, answer me this, and I want your thoughts on this as well, Tef. As much as we critique capitalism as what we should, what is the role of also presenting a newly envisioned future, Monica?
Yeah, that's what we've been chasing. That's the reason for creating, Breakthrough News. That's the reason that we, study our actual leaders, those who have passed on, and those who are, under occupation in U.S. prisons as a enemy combatant, basically. You know, the vision of like a black future or a future where there is liberation. Oh my God, hearing myself is so crazy.
Well, you're doing a great job. Don't worry.
Sorry
See,
about
now
that.
that
It's a lot to juggle.
There it is.
It's a lot
I
to
know.
juggle.
But having that vision of a black future in which we could have other hobbies besides basketball and rap, or black people don't have to be pigeonholed to certain things. Black people don't have to identify with the caricatures that we get from these misleaders and from our elected officials who say, in the Georgia runoffs, it was really horrific how much, get your booty to the polls with lots of strippers, rappers marching to the polls, wings and things of that nature. I would rather be ignored than somehow cater to with a bunch of free wings and like Hennessy or something. Like we could, I think we have more than that. I like different drinks. I like a sparkling water now and then. And if the vision is so limited to what could be like a Tyler Perry show. It's not what is new. What could be different? I think MLK said riots are the language of the unheard. I was reading Baldwin's letter from Harlem earlier. I recently read June Jordan's vision of Harlem with free good housing and stuff like that. That futurism. What could we imagine? What could we take that isn't a vision of like we were kings or we were Mansa Musa or whatever else? Like the working people, the working Africans that we descend from, those who our practices are still there, and our religions and how Black Christianity is and all across the world. What could we build if we had self-determination? What could life be like? What are different resources and things could we learn about ourselves? The national question of Black people being, pretty much a colonized nation, pretty much under an oppressive force, the police coming into our neighborhoods, and there's so many Black cops in Atlanta who come in and just kind of keep the old guard safe. If we get rid of that entire system, if we it's a long and grueling process, and it's not easy, but if we could get rid of these agents of the state, if we could stop the people who give them their marching orders, the Pelosi's, the Lance Bottoms, who make the curfews, who fund, give space to all the developers who are gentrifying Atlanta rapidly. What could life look like? What could Atlanta, being a Black Mecca, look like? The amount of people that actually are able to afford, Black people that actually are able to afford living in Atlanta has dropped sharply. I think the median income for a Black family in Atlanta City limits is around, or a Black family in Atlanta City limits is $23,000, while white families, the median income is $83,000. So what are we going toward? What is to be proud of when we have all these Atlanta, Georgia, the Black community brought us these senators? What is there to be proud of if Black control, Democratic control, leads us to more dispossession?
Tef, your thoughts?
There's a lot to unpack there. I think as I sit here, I start to think about the fact that, the reality of the situation is capitalism does exist, and people are going to have to make money. Making money doesn't necessarily make you a capitalist, but how you utilize and weaponize your money does, and the theory and thought process around how you get your money does as well. The spiritual intent, the personal intent, all of that goes into the gumbo when we, are cooking up our identity in terms of finance and so forth. But I think that it still goes back to innovation and organizing for me, because we are at a really prime time to do some really amazing things. If we are going to have some black millionaires that want to have some adjacency to the movement, then let's step to them with a real agenda. Let's and for each of our communities, and folks in these communities know what we need, know what we want. Um, a lot of times, people want to come compress genuine, organic moments of uprising and intrigue amongst the people with what's already been done. Let's get in here and make them do some one-to-ones. Let's get in here and make them canvas. Let's get in here and make them do this, and make them do that, and make them do that. And I was a part of something that was a genuine, organic uprising against the state, and it lasted for over 300 days. And we didn't do not one damn one-to-one. So we had no days of canvassing. There was no voter registration was on pause for 300 days. And my problem that I experience as an organizer is that we, the people who can get 250 people on the street corner, if something goes wrong, if there's a police officer involved shooting, that there's the people who are feeding, running the mutual aid programs, the grassroots mutual aid programs, the folks that are operating outside of the electoral spectrum of organizing, all too often were used during the election cycle, because the people that are doing electoral organizing, let's be honest, they're not really in the streets. So they know the organizers that are in the streets, so they come get you, and you go get the streets for them, because you don't want the opposition to win for real. You out here every day putting blood, sweat, and tears into stopping the opposition. So you're like, okay, they're gonna come through with the big guns and help us make sure that this person doesn't win. And as soon as they accomplish what they need to accomplish, which is basically the person that they need to get hired gets hired, they are outro. You hear me?
Yep.
And you're left there doing the mutual aid program by yourself. There's very little funding for that type of work, because unless you become a very deeply maniacal person about the process, you don't have the documentation involved to show a high-end funder that you gave away 400 Pampers last year, fed 600 people, dispersed 800 books to the children. You don't have the paper. You don't have the same industrial mind frame that an occupational activist has sometimes. So what happens is the authenticity of those people that are really the pulse of what makes these moments unique, that authenticity is often leveraged to build something that you're not a part of, or you don't have much control over. And as things currently stand, what's going to change the conversation in the United States and really make this a real, because I don't really necessarily know if I consider where we are to be right now like a genuine social movement. I guess you could call it a social movement, but I wouldn't call it a revolution. But where we are now, there's levels, and we can climb some levels. And I'm interested to see if this generation really does want to climb those levels, or are we really more so a makeshift remodeled version of the civil rights movement, where it sounds different, it looks different, but the objectives are basically just white inclusivity. And I think that we have opportunity to really be the demise of white supremacy, and to also really change the narrative, because a lot of people believe that the white man is invincible. They believe the United States is invincible. They believe the military industrial empire will wipe us out. Oh, the people aren't ready for revolution. And you see revolution every day in our communities. Crime is misappropriated revolutionary activity. Those are people who are living on the brink of society that are saying, this ain't working for me. So much to the point that I'm an everyday outlaw against that. I consider myself an outlaw against this regime. So I have determined that, I'm going to break their laws, but I'm going to appropriate the way I break their laws. So I'm not going to be out here doing things that are dangerous and harmful to my community, but I'm not going to abide by the laws of this land. I'm just not. It's a slave state. It's a colonizer regime. They murder, they rape, they pillage, they teach you to hate, they teach you to misappropriate the way you love. I'm not going to acknowledge their governance. I'm sorry. So that may have a different set of consequences for me than it has for somebody who is seeking to be able to sit next to Van Jones one day.
That's
No, I
true.
appreciate that on so many
And
different levels.
I
Go
will
ahead,
add on
Rania.
top of that, I will add just that Tef mentioned earlier the way that the world looks at these uprisings in the US. And it is true that, you know, people, you are in the belly of the beast, and people in other parts of the world, they do get inspired by what happens in the belly of the beast, because they're like, oh, like there's people that are being treated like that there too. And they also
Yeah.
recognize that in America, you're on the front lines of that. Like you are on the front lines of the empire. So it matters. It matters that this is happening and that there are people who have revolutionary mindsets in this country, because it's almost kind of like the world's depending on you.
That's for sure.
You have the
I
power
could
to
say,
change it here.
yeah,
Affects the world.
having just been in Haiti, no doubt about that. I mean, everyone was looking to see what's going to happen in the United States in terms of the history. Well, you know, there's so much there. We could talk for 8 more hours. Tef Poe, really appreciate you joining us, man. At Tef Poe, people can follow you. I hope they follow you, support everything you do, your organizing, your music. Just honored to have had you here on the show, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
Peace.
It was an honor to be here, y'all.
No, please, anytime. Open
Actually, I
door
can be
policy
myself
here.
on this show, so it was cool. I've been doing news bites that I hate all week, so.
Well, we're glad we could switch it up for you.